And here we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Friday night, All-Star buzz upon us. Nick Streets are here. Two goats in the building, Long Island legends. How are we doing, EJ and Mark? It's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm
Yeah,
doing
Mark.
great out here, but former Long Island legend out here in the West Palm Beach area, enjoying life and still following the Knicks pretty closely. I can't get it out of my blood.
We need you to keep it there, man, because we really appreciate you, man. So it's good to see you, Mark. Good to see you, CT. Happy Friday night to everyone. Happy All-Star weekend to everyone. And happy to see the Knicks in sixth place in the East. So this is a good time for us, all of us, to chat and to catch up.
Yep. Finally, we can take a breath from this crazy season. I know Mark's not been in the grind of the beat reporting, but you've been watching national games, catching the highlights on Twitter, keeping up with all the followers and the show, of course. EJ, it's great to have you on as well.
Yeah,
Salute to the chat. The replay gang, Nick Streets, the best fan base in the biz. What a season it's been so far. The Knicks 6 games over 500. We did the preview show, gentlemen. From then to now, what's been the key standouts to you? I'll start with Mark.
Well, let's tip our hat to Tom Thibodeau, who takes so much abuse
Oh,
on Twitter. I don't know another coach who would have this roster and be 6 games over 500. Of course, the regular season he takes so seriously, doesn't give any load management days to his guys, so the record could be a little inflated, but it's a remark. This is not a great roster, and he has gotten Julius Randle to believe again, and obviously tip your hat to Leon Rose for believing in Jalen Brunson, doing everything he could to sign him. He's their team MVP. Uh, I was told that Tom was actually stunned that Jalen was not an All-Star. Between you and me, I think Tom thinks Jalen should be in Utah over Julius. I don't know. Was there a late ad? I guess yeah, Jalen's home, right? He's not there, but it will be fun to see Julius in the three-point contest, and I would not bet on him winning. But an amazing first part of the season. It's actually more than the first part. There's probably only 22 games left. Thibodeau has done a very good job with the rotation. The Josh Hart trade is a keystone maneuver that is big in so many ways in terms of unity for this whole franchise from the front office to the coaching staff.
definitely, definitely. First off, again, please smash the like, subscribe. Shout out to Mark Berman, the legend. Thank you so much for blessing us with the time, and it's really a good time to be a Knicks fan and to see the upward trajectory of the franchise, the upward trajectory of this particular season. For the most part, when we started this season, we discussed this idea of the Knicks being a 500 team. But we have to give credit where credit is due. The fact that there have been some solid wins, the ability, for example, to close out this pseudo halfway point, this more like the three quarters mark, with the idea of really beating down Atlanta and doing so convincingly. Obviously the beginning of the season not quite fulfilling what we wanted in terms of the home record, but again, really seeming to have the ability to weather some of the ups and downs of the season. That's really been a positive. And the big thing that I'm really happy about is that for the majority of the season, Julius Randle has been happier than what he seemed to be last season. I think last season there were lots of questions as to whether or not he was happy here. And that's not even discussing his productivity last year. There just seemed to be like a sour, dour mood, like this idea of not necessarily being happy being in New York City. And much of our conversation was, is Julius Randle long for New York City, long for the New York Knicks? But the fact that he seems to be happy playing with his teammates, the fact that Jalen Brunson has been more than what anyone could have anticipated at the beginning of the season. And, a lot of people want to go back to the Donovan Mitchell conversation. Let us not sell short how much of an impact Jalen Brunson has had this year. So let's just be happy in terms of where we are so far. There's some There's some areas of concern, obviously, but again, Jalen Brunson, I owe you a drink. Whatever drink you want, if I ever bump into you, it's on me.
Yeah, Mark, EJ, remember we said in the preview show, well, I think I asked you, did Jalen Brunson have another gear to go to? You know,
Yeah.
people thought we're paying him what we've seen in Dallas, but I'm like, we might be paying him on what he might become,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, it's more than a gear. It's the leadership, and it's the ability to have Julius Randle buy in. EJ mentions how key it's been that Julius is a different human being this season. If you saw the clip at the end of the Atlanta game in the finale before the break, I think Jalen was being interviewed by Rebecca, and Julius came from behind. He was without his shirt, and he like hugged Jalen while he was getting interviewed, and it was a joyous scene. And I just said, "Wow, what a different Julius Randle! This could not have happened after any victory last year." Julius seemed jealous of R.J. Barrett. He is the opposite. He loves Jalen, and that's been the key. I mean, RJ has taken a step back, and I feel privately Julius likes it this way. He likes the fact that he and Jalen and even now Josh Hart are the three most important figures on the ball club. And but Jalen did that. Jalen is this unassuming leader who brought it all together, and it was just fun to see Julius so happy as the went into the All-Star break and Julius headed out to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of moments where I'm sorry, CT, kind of rusty,
Yeah,
but
you
there were
good.
definitely a couple of moments this season where you could see it visibly. Like Mark, you referenced one, and there was another game that we talked about where Julius says, I'm really happy to be doing it for the greatest fans in all of the NBA. Those little things. They don't seem like major moments, but they're so big in terms of building confidence, not only in the player, but confidence in the team and confidence in the organization. And I wish the entire organization understood that, how much leeway, how much latitude you would have with the fan base if you had, more people speak that way, more people speaking glowingly about the relationship with the fans. But Julius, I mean, if there were ever going to be a soap opera or a telenovela about an NBA like 2 or 3 seasons, Julius went from hero to villain to now re-emerging as a hero for a portion of the fan base, and that makes the season feel even better. Beyond the fact that we've had some good wins, the fact that you've had this arc kind of swing back another 180 degrees, that adds to Knicks fans feeling good about this particular year.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it's a
obviously,
great point about Julius talking about the fans, because as you know, more than a year ago, he gave that gesture that just that just spiraled out of control for Julius. We're
Yeah.
talking about a player who would not join the starting lineup introductions during road games late last season, and to see what he is now, it's just a remarkable turnaround.
Absolutely.
yep. In terms of Brunson shooting and defense, Mark, we go back to the talk about DeJounte Murray. Would that have been a better fit? Well, I think the Knicks hit that home run because, people thought Brunson's size would be a huge hindrance. But, I mean, the Knicks are solid defensively right now, obviously with the help of Grimes and Quickly's growth, and we'll talk about them. But really, Brunson, I haven't really seen much weakness from him. Yes, he struggles with some pick and roll at times, closing out, but it's just been the most perfect season, basically, than you could have predicted.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Murray, and I don't know if there was ever a real report that the Knicks were in on that. I was told they really weren't in on that. They were so focused on Donovan Mitchell and obviously Jalen. So uh, obviously, draft night, everyone was bewildered. Is this worth it? Not using your draft pick just to clear cap space. Uh, and it's been worth it. And yes, he's made strides without Don by his side has to do more, and he's done it. And he's done it efficiently, and he's in the clutch. And it's a joy to his father, Rick, who did just a great job raising Jalen, and he's so great in the locker room. Although I'm not in the locker room, I see how he conducts himself with the media. He says all the right things. He credits his teammates, and he does everything that a leader and a captain should do. I don't think they named him captain. Thibodeau doesn't believe in that, but I feel he should name Julius and Jalen co-captains. I think that would be a nice boost to the ego of Julius. Even add Josh Hart as
Wow.
tri-captain.
Oh, old school 1990s tri captains. I remember that. Roland Oakley and I believe Star.
And
I
actually,
remember that
RJ
those
would
days.
be thrilled for that. But
Yeah, gentlemen, we touched on Brunson and Randle a lot. What about your thoughts about Grimes' IQ's growth and the Josh Hart acquisition, EJ?
Listen, I mean, I think Grimes has had moments this season, but there have also been some moments of just being unsteady. I think the injury that he suffered early on, towards the end of the preseason into different parts of the season, has kind of slowed the progress that we thought we were going to see this season. But that's the great thing about team sports is that if one player doesn't necessarily achieve the progress or growth that we thought or expected for that particular player to have achieved for the season, if another player makes an exponential leap or an exponential leap in terms of growth, it can sort of overshadow the limited growth that we see in another player. So the leap that IQ has made, and I've been on this IQ bandwagon for a while now, he is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, we see like the number of minutes he's getting. We've seen his role grow. We had questions at the end of last season in terms of what would he be. I think we're starting to see what he's going to become start to crystallize. And that is so inspiring. That is so encouraging. It's not often, and Mark, we talked about this a few shows ago. It's not often we've been able to say with the utmost confidence, this is a Knicks player that we drafted and has flourished and developed under our system. The fact we can say that about Emmanuel Quickly makes my heart sing, because when's the last time we've been able to say that about a homegrown Knick? So I wish there was more we can say about about Grimes, but IQ, IQ, IQ.
well, it's a blessing that they didn't trade him. There were inquiring about
Yep,
IQ,
facts.
and Raymond Brothers, his agent, I know, was concerned about IQ in terms of his role on the team and his future contract situation. So I think the thought process was Knicks didn't at the time feel like he was worthy of a big extension in the offseason, so maybe we should cut it now and try to get some assets. But now, they don't trade him, thankfully, and he's turned into a player that they really should try to keep. I know that the agent is going to want a nice contract extension this offseason. The beat writers are going to be writing about that for a long time. While Obi Toppin is not going to be afforded a substantial contract extension, I think he's got to be traded, actually. I was surprised. Listen, I'm not shocked they didn't trade him at the trade. I tweeted this. William Wesley is in love with the guy and wants Thibodeau to play him more. But the IQ situation now is, what do you do in the offseason in terms of a contract extension? He's played terrifically off the bench. He started a little bit during injuries. It's a great bounce back season for Quickly, because I thought he had a little bit of a sophomore decline until the end of that season.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a
in
problem.
terms of in terms of his play, six man of the year candidate, in my opinion, so far. Gentlemen, he could be that sixth starter on the team when Brunson's out. Mark, we saw how great IQ was filling in to that starting unit. I think the Knicks won a few games.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Knicks don't look at him as a starter, obviously, with Jalen there. But you're right. In injury situations, he filled in beautifully. And again, remember, we weren't sure if he's a point guard. What is he? Undersized shooting guard, point guard. He shows he can do a lot of things, and he's a perfect sixth man. I know when he got drafted, someone said maybe he's a Louis Williams down the road, but I'm just worried about the off season and negotiations with Raymond Brothers, who he's going to want a lot of money on an extension. So that's something to look out for.
Yeah, with the Hart acquisition, now he's that Swiss Army knife,
Mm.
and obviously he's going to need a contract extension as well. And what are your thoughts on Mitchell Robinson, gentlemen?
Ooh, you want to take that one, Mark? Should
EJ,
this is one of the
uh,
issues with.
they're winning
Yeah,
without him. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, no, I was going to say the same thing. Like, this is the hard thing about this roster is that, certain players go down or certain players' minutes are reduced, and we might have an affinity. We might love the player. We might love what the player represents or the possibilities of the player. But the one thing many of us as fans may not want to talk about is the reality of the salary cap, the reality of not everyone can get their big contracts as the roster is composed right now, as it's constructed right now. So, you know, anytime you mention a player and say they might have to move, it's not because you don't like the player. It's just because there are but so many bodies, but so many minutes. And, as Pudge is mentioning, uh, as Mitch goes, there are questions about what will Jericho Sims' role be, because there'll come a time in the next year or two. There are serious questions. Are you going to extend Jericho? What do you do with Jericho? And this is kind of the weird position where it's like, I love Mitch. I love what he can be. I love the defensive energy that he presented earlier in the season. But I don't know. Like, what do we do with Mitchell Robinson? I think the question actually becomes the answer. What do you do? Like, even with, last point really quickly, even with Tom Thibodeau saying that he wanted to stick to this 9-man rotation, once Mitch comes back, whose minutes gets reduced? Um,
Oh,
it's difficult.
Obi.
great question.
And that further devalues
Yeah, I think
Obi.
Obi Toppin. Yeah, I think Obi Toppin's minutes will. And not that he's got many minutes now, but I don't
Yep.
know what the future holds for Obi and Tom Thibodeau. If Tom Thibodeau is coach next season, I think you got to move Obi. I just don't think Tom really believes in him enough, especially when Julius Randle is playing an All-Star. But in terms of Mitchell Robinson, I mean, he was doing excellently. Best offensive rebounder in basketball, maybe. But the disappointing part still, you don't see him ever develop anything beyond him being an alley-oop guy, putback guy. I mean, that's great what he does, but you just wish like he would expand a little bit, and just nothing in his 4 years. Uh, Actually, this probably is his fifth year. Uh, but yeah, listen, his contract is not crazy, crazy, so you could probably trade him if you really believe Jericho Sims can be a cheaper version of Mitchell Robinson. I'm very excited to see Jericho in the dunk contest. There's that viral video of him hitting his head on the rim. I saw a panel of ESPN experts. Nobody picked Jericho Sims to win it because big men have trouble winning it because it looks too easy. But Jericho might be a dark horse champion and follow in Obi's footsteps as a slam dunk champion and Robinson.
Yeah, you mentioned Obi and the trade deadline's passed. I thought there was a 50-50 chance they might end up trading Obi, but like Mark says, in the summer is always easier to make trades, and then you get the rest of this season to see, I guess, even though Obi's not getting many minutes, but it does point towards, Mark, we are getting asked. Remember, you did speak about, Tom Thibodeau having more trust in Obi after last season, after the finish. What do you think changed between then and now? Do you think Obi just didn't grow as a defender, or do you think it was just a minutes crunch?
he was very excited how Obi ended last season, but it was during a time where teams weren't fielding their if team playoff teams were waiting for the playoffs, non-playoff teams were just tanking. Uh, but yeah, he didn't grow as a defender. I'm just told that Tom doesn't trust enough as a defensive player in terms of being in the right spot. He obviously offers no rim protection, and the big thing for Tom when it comes to big men. And I just feel, I'm told that he just doesn't believe his basketball IQ is growing. It's just stagnating. He's still sort of, the same way as a rookie. But if he's hitting his 3-point shots, then Tom's going to try to find some minutes for him. But a lot of it, if Randle is playing out of his mind, Obi has to wait because he doesn't believe in a Randle Obi front court. He doesn't want to outscore people. It changes the identity of the team.
It almost seems as if it's the culmination of like many variables at the same time. So we signed Julius. Julius has a season that no one, I don't think, really anticipated. That creates this conundrum in terms of minutes. It almost feels as if sometimes that Obi is constantly looking at the coach and looking at the bench and is looking to say, okay, what can I do to prevent being pulled from the game? How many touches can I get to show like I belong on the floor? Then there's I have but so much time before I have to start renegotiating a contract. So it's almost as if like it's the perfect storm of it's also Coach Thibodeau's rotation decisions. It's also like what he believes in terms of needing to have a rim protector and not being the kind of person who constantly wants to run and gun. It's all of these factors that kind of seem to make it so that Obi does kind of seem like the odd man out, although he is a fan favorite. And I think that's part of the reality of being a fan of a salary capped sport. Like this is what's going to start happening in the next season or two, where some of the people that we love, there might be some tough decisions, and Obi might be the first of those tough decisions.
Yeah, we keep talking about asset management, and sometimes you just can't predict what's going to happen in the future. We drafted Obi, I believe, like Leon did, in mind to be the future power forward. But Julius Randle had the season he's had. Now, gentlemen, it's been 2 All-Star years out of 4. I would take that all day, every day, because I don't think the Knicks have had a 2-time All-Star since Carmelo Anthony. Those players don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
And
yeah, without
also,
a doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, without a doubt, I think Julius should be able to string it together now. Because if Jalen Brunson is now the leader, Julius is a willing follower. And what happened last season, Julius, it was more a mental thing than a physical thing. So he's made now 2 All-Star games. The key will be next season. Can he put back-to-back All-Star seasons together? And I think now that Jalen is sort of the face of the franchise and now RJ, I think we're going to see more of this from Julius. And I hope the fans still aren't talking about, oh, he's upping his trade value this summer. I mean, it's been tough on Julius, I'll have to say.
Oh, I'll be one of the first ones to say it, because one of my predictions during the off season, the preseason show prediction show, was that the better Julius did vis-a-vis his relationship with Jalen Brunson, the more likely it would be that he'd be traded. So I can definitely say like that was a incorrect prediction. Like it seems as if Jalen and Julius are going to be cornerstones. But it's also in part because at the time, I couldn't imagine the 3 lefties coexisting. And so I think as Jalen has proven to be what he is, as Julius has had a renaissance in such a short turnaround, it has come with a little bit of questions, a few questions with regards to RJ Barrett and what's been happening to him recently. For as much as we feel like this euphoria, RJ Barrett right now does seem to warrant a little bit of concern.
Yes, let's talk about
To a
RJ,
point
Mark.
where, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You had the concerns over the fit, in the preview show with RJ Randle. Moving forward now, we have more guys that need the ball. I like RJ off with the bench unit a lot. He gets that opportunity to be on the ball, improve his playmaking some. But it does look like, I feel like the Knicks still feel like they want to make that upgrade at the wing. OG Anunoby
Mhm.
might be there available in the summer. Um, a guy with a better defender and a guy with bigger size. How do you see the situation play out with RJ Barrett and his fit with this club, Mark, and then EJ?
yeah. Well, you just hope that RJ's contract extension is not going to prevent them from trading him, because if they invest in Josh Hart, and I think they will, Jalen loves him. Julius seems to like him. He's already made a major impact in that locker room. Then RJ becomes a little more extraneous, and listen, he's been up and down, but that's been his 4 years. He's too streaky to be depended upon for a really, really top four Eastern Conference ball club. And I do believe that RJ will be on the block this summer, as long as they are assured of getting Josh Hart, who has been just magnificent. I mean, there's some guys who you just know embrace New York, and he seemed delighted when he got traded. I think, you play in Portland and you don't get that recognition. Here he comes here, and all of a sudden, the whole nation, knows Josh Hart is a really good player. So, listen, if Josh Hart is a long-term piece, which I believe he is, I know Thibodeau loves him, and I know Leon Rose, with all his ties to Villanova. It was a great fit. And listen, I was saying before about this unification of the front office and coaching staff. This Josh Hart trade, everyone loved. From William Wesley, who also is a South Jersey guy with so many ties to Villanova as well, uh, and Thibodeau, all in on it. Everyone was in on it, and they got rid of a very divisive player in Reddish. Obviously, we've reported first that Thibodeau did not want the Reddish trade. The front office did it anyway. Hope to give him a chance. And in the end, Tom really didn't give him enough of a chance, in my opinion. Listen, Tom has certain strong players, and once he makes that decision, you're in the doghouse. And Cam, despite the season.
Yeah, I definitely think that the RJ factor. I think someone said this in the chat, this has definitely been something I've been thinking about recently. We just can't measure the productivity of a talent just based upon their raw basketball talent. Some There are some times where it might be they have the physical talent, but the aptitude in terms of like learning the game and growing and developing. So, Mark, as you were talking about before with regards to Mitchell Robinson, what are the ways in which he's really thought about the ways he can grow his offensive game? So is it also the ability to succeed in New York? Is it the idea of learning how to be a team player in terms of the ball, in terms of the game? There just seems to be something this part of the season. I don't want to say it's the entire season, but thus far, where RJ seems to be really tunnel vision about I'm going to be a bull heading towards the basket and not understanding, okay, how can I actually grow my game in other ways to complement what Jalen is, to complement what Julius is doing? And maybe that's not something at this point, or maybe ever, he might be able to do in a Knicks uniform. And maybe it wasn't Julius we should have been talking about at the end of last season or the beginning of this season. It might have been RJ. That's unfortunately the nature of the business.
Well, they didn't want to give him that contract extension. First choice was
Hmm.
put him in a Donovan Mitchell deal, and they had to come up big with RJ with a contract extension to show that, put a positive spin on it. Well, at least
Hmm.
up. At the time, the expense was not crazy at all. But, now going into the summer, you know, the money is pretty high. I think there'll be a team interested in him, and maybe it's Toronto bringing back the Toronto native. I mean, that's a great uh, piece of the Raptors in terms of marketing. But it's
Yeah,
not a crazy thought, as you mentioned, OG, that RJ would be going back to his homeland.
yeah. It comes down to me, gentlemen, about fit. To me, it's not so
Yeah.
much about could RJ get to a certain level. I think we all
Mm.
believe RJ has talent and he could get to a certain level. The time comes now when you're running a business to think about fit, like Obi. Do these pieces fit? The New York Knicks might be closer to getting to title contention than we all think, or that we all thought at the start of this season. And the time is now to start rejigging some of these pieces, moving some guys on if they don't fit. Talk about fit, like Josh Hart. He fits this atmosphere like a glove, exactly like what Mark said, fitting in with the front office, the coach, fitting in with Jalen on the court and Randle. So I think that's the key for this organization moving forward now, is getting the right fits for everybody. Three lefties, all guys that need the ball playing in the starting unit. Um, I think we're lucky Julius has been shooting the three ball as well as he has been. Otherwise, we would have been seeing a lot more zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And maybe that was a
Yeah.
component that was missing.
Hmm.
Say that again, EJ?
No, I think that maybe that was the component that's missing in terms of a lot of our evaluations or a lot of our fan evaluations is that the fit component, again, I think sometimes we just look at the raw individual talent and not necessarily how does that particular individual talent fit in the greater scheme of not just the team, but the organization as well. So in as much as we may have loved Cam or seen raw talent in Cam, that doesn't necessarily mean automatically that's a fit in terms of organizational philosophy, team strategies, or team rotations, the coach's vision for what he wants the team to be. So I think that's something that, again, as we have these conversations about the future of the Knicks, let's talk more and more about fit.
Yep.
Right.
Because players can't reach their
And
potential if they're not in the right environment, Mark.
Yeah,
right. And Josh is in the perfect environment. He's got that grit and grind game, and plus he can shoot the three. His 3-point percentage in Portland this season was 30%, but he's shooting very well since he got to New York, given the green light. In Portland, he talked about it to Zach Braziller of the New York Post in Post Plus a couple of days ago. He said that I was sort of like the third, fourth, fifth options, and when I got a 3-point shot off, it was like late in the shot clock. The offense wasn't built around shooting 3-pointers. So now he's got a bigger role here, and he can shoot the three, and the Knicks want him to shoot the three. So so far this trade is just a bonanza. Hopefully, in April, we're still talking that way.
yeah.
Yeah, Mark. EJ, him, Quickly, and Grimes, like, is my dream defensive unit. When you got
Yeah.
Mitch, you could throw in Randle and Barrett. Yep,
And the
a lot of
energy,
different ways.
the energy that he presents, that's
Yeah,
that's really what's exciting to me is that there's that no, we're gonna keep it in gear, we're gonna go shift into another gear in terms of hustle and diving on the floor. And I think sometimes that's the piece that's missing. Like I thought, like in earlier parts of the season, there were plays or like if a call didn't go a certain way where it could have been a 50-50 ball, but it's the turnaround complaint to a ref, as opposed to like a Josh Hart who seems to instinctively, I'm not going to give up on this play until the very moment the whistle is blown. And that's contagious. It appears to be contagious, where it's like okay, this play isn't over. Let's keep going. That's really critical.
Well, Walt Frazier, and I don't know if he apologized or I think Ian Begley mentioned that some people in the organization were not crazy about that remark by Walt Frazier when he ripped RJ's defensive prowess, citing a analytic statistic. But listen, Walt sees all the games, and he's one of the best defenders in NBA history from the guard position. So he knows what he's looking at, and he's not just going to randomly talk about RJ away unless he sees. It's not about analytics. Walt knows a great defender when he sees one, and he obviously doesn't see that in RJ Barrett right now.
Yep. And yeah, gentlemen, I'll throw a few rapid fires at you as we go around. And I want to get you to a few words on Brooklyn's demise, starting with Mark.
I mean, it is such a colossal collapse of everything. I mean, it's historic, epic. I can't believe that three Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, all asked out of Brooklyn. And part of me feels that these guys played for the Nets, but they realized no matter what happens, we're always second. Knicks own the town. We're just renting. I guess they just didn't feel it. And listen, Kyrie, obviously, his personality, who, as eccentric as we all thought he was when he signed with the Nets, it just went out of control. But I just feel this franchise is cursed. I almost feel that they should move from Brooklyn and head to Seattle, that desperately needs an NBA team. The Knicks are the team now. Not page New York Post anymore. They were there on occasion, not a lot, but quite a bit, considering past years. But the New York Post and the other tabloid, they're not going on the back page anymore. It's Knicks, Knicks, Knicks.
And they're trying to trade Simmons for salary dump. What might look like, EJ?
Let's go back to that show we did before the season started. And when we talked about who would be the preeminent powers in the East, one of the things that we said was you can't count on the Nets because at some point Kyrie might Kyrie. Kyried the highest possible of Kyrie. So, I was waiting to say this because it's been a while since I've been off the show, but the best thing about the Nets and this kind of implosion is that it may have reset the trade market. And that's the thing that gets me excited, is that if we can now calibrate and know how much a trade for KD is worth, then what we saw was like this flurry of trade activity. So maybe off the heels of that Rudy Gobert disaster in the summer, this KD trade will kind of temper what the offseason trade market might look like. I'm hoping that's what it will do. But otherwise, again, the last thing I'll say about this is I don't give them a lot of credit for many things, but thank God James Dolan was like, he wanted no part of Kyrie, because imagine if all of this took place in Madison Square Garden. So that's my last piece on.
Yep. And
the Knicks would have signed Kyrie only if KD was part of it. At the time we reported, the Knicks were not interested in Kyrie solo as a tandem.
Yep.
And the reason was the reason. Whatever happened with the Nets, that's what Dolan and Knicks Press was afraid of.
Yep. We have a chat question from Buzzabita about is Dolan as bad as the AM Hoops video says, Mark? I haven't seen what's out there. I do know that Dolan did the W fan interview about the situation with the legal video. But yeah, any thoughts towards that? I think we know your thoughts towards Dolan, his media policy.
Yeah. Listen, the only thing about Dolan is he's willing to spend, he's willing to hit the luxury tax, he's willing to pay coaches what they want or deserve. But all the other stuff, it's difficult. Right now, his mind is more on the Sphere in Las Vegas than on the Knicks, which is probably a good thing. So he's not meddling as much this season. That sphere has been a boondoggle, and I guess he spent a lot of money on a Super Bowl commercial, and that's why he had to fire his new PR guys, public relations men like War. So yeah, Dolan is so wrapped up with the sphere right now, and not as much on the Knicks. But that facial recognition is just another chapter in a book of miserable decisions he's made that are just unfriendly to fans. But the Knicks fans are so amazing that they continue to go to the Garden, continue to watch the Garden, to watch the games, and continue to think about the Knicks. No matter what Dolan does, the fans are not deterred.
It's like a marriage we can't get out of. Like you with the New York Post for 23 years.
Yeah, man.
He keeps pulling you in. And what do you think about a playoff series, 4th, 5th, Cleveland, New York Knicks? Do you think that's a good matchup for the Knicks? Best case scenario.
EJ?
I think when you get to those 4 or 5, I think the 4 or 5 matchups tend to be the most interesting. There's a reason why you're seated at that particular place. Obviously, I think it would be likely that Cleveland would be the 4 seed. So that extra game at home, perhaps is a difference. But at the same time, the Knicks have done pretty well playing on the road. So it's a toss-up. I think the deciding factor is obviously Cleveland has Donovan Mitchell. Cleveland has a player who has the ability to create and to devastate in crunch time. But historically, those 4 or 5 matchups, anything can happen. Anything could definitely happen. So I'm not going to say it's a no. But, and again, the Knicks fan in me really would want to see that be a possibility.
Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, it would be an amazing matchup with Donovan, the big storyline. And, you made a great point. The Knicks have a great road record. But the key is Julius Randle. He had that great season 2 years ago, and then against Atlanta, he kind of choked. And that's going to be going into these playoffs. It's amazing out here in South Florida. I watch so much Miami Heat. It's amazing how badly they've fallen off, even though they're still, 6, 7. Lowry has gotten old really fast, and Butler's not having a good year, and they've had a lot of years. So I wouldn't mind the Knicks, somehow, if they could get Miami instead of Cleveland. Cleveland's going to be a tough matchup. And I'm worried about a Donovan Mitchell explosion night after night. He didn't have a good playoffs last year, but he needed a change of scenery. And I'm worried. Jalen had a great playoffs last year with Dallas, but that was with Luka by his side. There's some playoff inexperience with the Knicks. So it would be a great series. I think it could go the distance.
Yeah.
Yep. And Mark, we can't have you on without, getting your thoughts about the future of the club and putting your thinking cap on. We've got CAA. What's the next big move for the Knicks if you were running this thing? Do you think, and what you've heard, do you think Joel Embiid is that target Leon Rose could be hoping for? Do you think these talks with Zach LaVine in Chicago, do you think there was any traction to that?
Yeah, there was some talk, but, not nearly to what it could be this summer. Thibodeau likes Zach. He doesn't love Zach. He coached Zach, traded Zach. But listen, he's a scorer. He doesn't do everything on the court, but he's a terrific scorer. And if they could, wield R.J. Barrett and, futures, I think the Knicks would have to do it in a second. But listen, I thought Devin Booker would be, if the Sun continued to crumble, I thought like Devin Booker would be a possibility. Now Durant is there, and they look like things are, turning in the right direction. Embiid is always a possibility, but I don't know who you give up for him. I guess Mitchell would be part of that deal. Shea Gilgeous Alexander is obviously on their radar. Uh, they're still, they got Josh Hart, but they want to win a championship. They want to break this curse from 1973. So they need another star, another superstar in this roster, and they have to give up all those draft picks to do it. And R.J. Barrett, hopefully being a centerpiece. It's who becomes available, and hopefully it's not Jimmy Butler, because I've been watching him and he's injured a lot, and I think he's starting to go on the decline as much as Tom Thibodeau loves him. Listen, Tom Thibodeau once loved Derrick Rose, and look what this season. Really a great story that I don't think has been how Derrick completely off the radar.
Yeah. No.
Yep, definitely. Well, yeah, it's been fascinating this season talking to you, EJ, Mark. Is there anything you'd like to get out there? Your thoughts on what's happened this season, or anything that you've seen?
EJ?
I was waiting for the legend to answer that question. No, I guess again, the fact that they're clearly 6 games over 500, that is a great step. I think the other thing is too is let's have our narratives in terms of the team be fluid in nature. Like, for example, there are a couple of points that Mark brought up with regards to Tom Thibodeau. I know Tom Thibodeau has a reputation, but the fact that he's been willing to bench Derrick Rose, I mean, that should really reshape our perspective and the narrative with regards to Tom Thibodeau. The fact that Jalen Brunson was almost an afterthought after having been signed because of the saga of the Donovan Mitchell trade possibilities. That should reshape. We should reshape the narrative in terms of how we perceive him and how we perceive his role in the future for this organization. And the other thing too, and especially in terms of what we've seen with the Josh Hart trade, maybe we hadn't taken strongly enough the idea of synchronicity in terms of the front office and the coach and the team. Maybe finally they understand one another, and hopefully they're moving unilaterally as a cohesive unit. And maybe that will allow for the organization to have positive days in the years to come, where we can make that big deal, and it's not going to be one part of the organization operating without the confidence or the trust of the other part of the organization. So hopefully good days ahead.
Yeah, well, further what EJ said, great point about the front office and the coaching staff. It is an issue. It has been an issue, I'm told. It's still been an issue where the front office learned things that Thibodeau isn't doing. Brock Aller is really not a friend of Tom Thibodeau. William Wesley is not a big supporter of Tom Thibodeau, I'm told. He still made some earlier in the season, and even, ago, he said some things, to other people about Tom. So I feel it's so important for the front office and the coaching staff to really get on the same page. Tom has a big supporter in Rosas. I don't even know if the Knicks ever announced his hiring. I think he's quote unquote consultant. I don't know if they even had a press
He's
release.
handling the calls.
He's ally. Yeah, big ally of Thibodeau. They work together in Houston. And Leon is just trying to manage it all. Leon is caught in the middle trying to manage all these personalities. So going forward, more in the off season. For instance, if the Knicks say they finish 7th and don't get into the play-in, into the regular playoffs, who knows what happens with Thibodeau? If they make the playoffs and finish 6 or 5 out in the first round, we still don't know if Tom is definitely coming back. So my hope for this franchise is everyone gets on the same page, because right now this roster, these players are on the same page. I'm told Miles McBride, even though this affected him quite a bit, this Hart trade, he's thrilled. He loves Josh Hart. That's a great addition. He's going to take a step back. So again, I hope the front office and coaching staff can be one full unit with one vision.
Mm. I would love that too, but I don't see that happening generally when you have so many numbers in the front office. Like we said, so many cooks in the kitchen. The aim for Leon was that they all have their opinions and feed that back, and then he makes the overall decision. So maybe the aim is to have so many different opinions so that he could get different perspectives and then make that decision. So yeah, I doubt we're ever going to get unanimous line of thinking with that situation. But as long as Tom Thibodeau keeps winning, as long as his team makes the playoffs, are competitive and moving in the right direction, I think Thibs is going to stay. And I think Leon Rose is probably going to be here a little bit more, Mark.
Yeah, well, after this Hart trade, and if the Knicks do get a 6-5-4 situation, probably six or five, uh, I mean, I think Leon and Tom keep going forward. But listen, there's still 20 plus games, and Tom's regular season record, like I said before, it's a little, there's no load management at the Garden. Every game is the Super Bowl for Tom Thibodeau. So look what happens in the season.
Yep, definitely. And playoffs bound. It's going to be a huge stretch. 22 games left, ladies and gentlemen. It'd be great to connect, Mark, before the playoffs and preview that because that's where the money is going to be made. I think for this club, Julius Randle's development, Jalen Brunson. I feel like he's a big playoff player now. The Knicks have that leader, and Josh Hart is capturing the Knicks fans' hearts. So it's going to be a fascinating end of this season. I appreciate you coming on as always.
CT, EJ, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, even though I'm not in the middle of the combat zone. It's nice to come on and talk Knicks. Definitely miss being it as much as I used to be. But 23 seasons, that it was enough. And I'm enjoying life in Florida. But the invitation, I'm very flattered that you thought of me.
No, you're the man, man. You're definitely the man. So we appreciate having you, man. Thank you so much for making the time.
Always active on Twitter. We love it. Love the conversation still. Yeah, and as always, Mark, you're always welcome here on this show. You've done so much for us, Knicks fans. And yeah, I hope you continue to enjoy your retirement and are doing great work with the Palm Beach Post and are covering tennis, which we know you love, but not just as much as you love the New York Knicks.
Yeah, I'll be at the Delray Beach Open this weekend. There's a ATP tournament in town, so I'll be enjoying that. But I still will to watch Julius Randle in the three-point contest because I can't wait to see
Yep.
how that transpires.
Yep, definitely, Mark. Yep. Chat soon.
Take care.
Hi, Mark.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Berman, the one, the only. We've got CT, my man EJ as well. Let's continue to rock out. But it was great to hear what Mark had to say.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Always a pleasure to hear him. CT, let me step out here for a second. I
Yep,
will jump back in a few minutes. All right.
yep, got you.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, streets are buzzing. Smashing that like button because the New York Knicks, for the first time, I think in a decade, have been 6 games over 500. It feels like it's been up and down, like the biggest roller coaster, you can imagine. But what matters is how you finish, not how you start. And this club is moving in the right direction this season. Young players growing. Nothing's perfect, of course. There's been some regression from players. RJ Barrett's defense, and of course Mitchell Robinson's injury. There's been setbacks, but the main thing is that this front office, like Mark says, has got decisions to make. Big decisions to make. I think the closer you get, realizing the closer you might be getting to being in a contender window, the more important the decisions you have to make are there. And I think this club's work ain't finished yet. We add you want to add a big piece, you got to think about fit. You got to think about obviously the salary and the big trade bomb's going to come eventually, but we really, really do need to think about, how is this next piece going to fit? And I think playoffs this season's going to be good for us to figure out, can Julius Randle handle that pressure? Is Jalen Brunson our number one, number two option, long term in the playoff setting? And I'm not talking round one, round two. I'm talking Eastern Conference Finals, like Pudge Nice was talking about. We need big ambitions. It ain't just really about making a first round playoff series and taking a team to 6 or 7 games. We've been 50 years since we won a chip, and it's about time we start to have higher expectations as well, and how we can get there. And making the playoffs is the only way you can find out, who's built for that moment with that situation. I like the fast break points the other night, 30 to 11 fast break points, getting up and down. The bench is been amazing with Hartenstein play, holding us down in Mitch's absence. Quickly's growth. Now he's about to get paid. Just like we talked about with Mark and EJ, I think Quickly's definitely going to be sticking around. He's definitely looking for a solid figure with his agent Raymond Brothers or whoever it may be. But he's earned his role. That's fair. You ball out, you get paid. That's just how it is. RJ Barrett's contract, in terms of the figure, it wasn't, bad when I first heard. And RJ Barrett has the potential to outplay that contract easily. Obviously, he's 22 years of age and still growing. But I'm looking at the fit, long term. I see RJ thriving in an environment and growing as a player when he needs to be on the ball more. He needs to be that guy getting more touches, being able to distribute and all of that. And unfortunately, with Randle and Brunson and their usage, their success this season, it just may be an instance where we need to keep RJ playing, at least half of his minutes with the bench lineup, so he can get those reps up. But salute to the best chat in the biz. Right now we're popping on the streets of buzzing. Friday night, the feeling's right. Kenny says we need another stud. Yep, we certainly do. The tough thing is studs don't grow on trees too. There was a lot of talk, could Knicks be in the play from Devin Booker? Well, they got KD right now. They're in the thick of a playoff championship hunt. So I don't see any moment recently, soon to come, where Devin Booker is going to be available. Karl Anthony Towns, that's probably more likely. Does it get to the point where Sam Presti says, you know what, SGA, now's the time to cash in, baby. 6 first-round picks and pick swaps. I don't think that's going to be too likely either, because Oklahoma City Thunder are getting closer to winning. They are in a situation where they've got Chet Holmgren to come back next year. They've got a draft pick to come. We got New Orleans Pelicans on the come up and all of that. So it's going to be tough to predict, who's going to become that next guy, become available. Right now, I have to say probably Cat, maybe Joel Embiid in a year or two, if Philly end up flaming out. I can't see Philly's window with James Harden and Embiid lasting that long, especially with Milwaukee, with the Bucks there. Brooklyn's out of that race now. Maybe the Celtics make that big upgrade. There's talk they might be open to trading Jalen Brown, to pair Jason Tatum up with another bona fide All-NBA player, maybe Bradley Beal. Something tells me that the Celtics aren't quite content with what's happening. Maybe a second-round playoff exit may change a lot of things up in Phoenix right now. But yeah, Kenny also says, is Ant-Man available? I think Ant-Man's going to be that dude they keep to build for the long term. But it's going to be very interesting to see how, if you do feel like Randle and you do feel like Brunson are those two building blocks, those two keepers, or with RJ, we still need that extra guy to get us to that next level. Spider Mitchell is going to be a free agent at the end of next season. But again, the question is about Spider's fit. With Brunson and the scoring he's given you, do you feel like Spider's still a necessity? With Randle and Brunson scoring, we need a guy, we need a bigger wing, we need extra defense. We need fit with this situation. Mikal Bridges put up 45 the other night. Is he a star on the rise? Mikal Bridges, in terms of fit, would be nice on this team. A guy who could stretch the defense out, gain respect of the defense, shoot lights out. He's a good fit. But, talks are Brooklyn actually declined trading Mikal Bridges for 4 first-round picks. Ladies and gents, that's crazy that Brooklyn declined that. They obviously think very, very highly of Mikal Bridges, and so they should. They definitely got something for the future with that. Like P&I says, yeah, that'd be the Nova Gang. We pivot from the Duke Blue Devils to the Nova Gang. With that situation, salute Phillip. Cat defense is questionable. LaMelo Ball, that name could be more realistic. Creating homes, salute. LaMelo's name is certainly going to continue to swirl with the situation that Charlotte's in. And his pops, his camp wants him in a bigger market. No doubt about that. But he's fit with Jalen Brunson as well. That's going to be interesting. I like the Grimes, the Josh Hart fit. Our defense is solid at the moment in terms of when our best perimeter guys are on the court. J-Dub feels like Jeremiah Grant is an unrestricted free agent. I'd be surprised if Portland let him go, given what they've invested in Grant. I do feel like Portland, at that point, they need to do whatever they can to keep him happy, keep Dame happy with that situation. Pudge would give the Nets 5 first rounders and Obi for Bridges. It does look like 4 first round picks is the going rate, but I've heard Bobby Marks and other people say, the Nets and the Knicks, they're maybe never destined to ever do a trade, especially like that, helping each other out in that way. I think if they trade Bridges, it's going to be back to the West Coast. Like you said, it's going to be challenging to see that happen, man. Now that he's in the Brooklyn Nets, we missed the boat with Mikal Bridges. What would have been if we didn't draft Kevin Knox and we just took that no-brainer wing that we needed at the time, the guy with the lower ceiling but the higher floor that everyone was worried about at the time, Mikal Bridges. Miles Bridges has even turned out a lot better, sans his recent, issue with the law. But yeah, we whiffed on that draft. We whiffed on the Ntilikina draft with Spider, but we've made the best of the situation that we have right now, and we are in a situation where I think we're moving in the right direction. Still, we have the Dallas pick this year. There's still question marks over Kyrie and Luka's fit, so that ain't a home run to me. Kyrie's still cryptic about his future, and he's a dude who likes to pick his destination. I think they bought a rental. I really think that Kyrie is going to go to LA, La La Land, and team up with LeBron. I really think that Kyrie's going to skip out of Dallas. I don't think they got enough to compete in the West, to compete against the Nuggets, compete against the Phoenix Suns, all of that. It's going to be tough. But the great thing is the Knicks still have that first round pick in this great draft. It's looking like it might be 15, in the best case scenario, probably the highest it might be 23, 24, which is a place where we can draft a solid talent, a solid wing. Maybe we could draft more on fit, based on in terms of potential. We do need to start drafting on fit because we can't keep collecting these assets and then losing value on them. Guys like Obi, Cam Reddish, we lost value on them. If we continue to draft guys that Thibs might not play, or they're not going to get the right minutes to thrive, then it's going to be a waste right now. And I think the Knicks have a scarce amount of roster spots right now. We've got Hart, we've got Grimes, we've got Quickly, we got enough big men. Now we need a wing. We need a wing who can shoot if we are adding anyone else to this picture. Maybe a great summer RJ Barrett comes out and proves to be that dude to keep long term. That's still possible. Players can make upgrades in the summer. That's the time. Put in that work, get the shooting up, get the defense up, RJ, and he could be that piece still. I still have big question marks though over the fit with Randle, with Brunson, and with RJ. Three guys that really, really need the ball, and none of them are great, excellent catch and shoot guys. I know Randle's shooting nice from volume, but it ain't exactly like he's a Mikal Bridges sort of lights out shooter either. you know. So keep it coming, keep the buzz coming. We'll see if EJ jumps back in. But it's been a great show so far. Friday night, heading into this All-Star break, and getting the thoughts of Berman and the chat. Everyone out here, yeah, Philip. That was amazing. That Mikal Bridges, when asked about New York, he first referenced MSG instead of the team that he's playing on. That lets you know what we talked about tonight too. That it's all about the Mecca, and not about Barclays or over there. Especially, they're back to rebuilding right now. So the Knicks are owning New York well and truly. Do I feel like OG Anunoby could be on the move? J Dub. I feel like he could be in the summer. I think Masai Ujiri's gonna make some retooling. Maybe Pascal, maybe OG. I think Fred VanVleet's gonna be gone. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens in Toronto. My issue with that trade is at the asking price. 3 unprotected picks and pieces for OG. He would give us another upgrade, but I think the Josh Hart thing does add a lot of what OG would give us, minus the size. Yeah, I really think it's similar to a double up. No doubt OG's bigger and better defensively, but given what we have in Hart now, I think we need a better shooter than OG. Also, he's another guy who wants a bigger role, so that's going to be interesting to see. Yep. We have EJ, the one, the only.
Sorry about that. Had a little meeting that I had to step into for work, but I'm back.
Yeah, salute. Yeah, we're talking about Brooklyn's demise now,
Oh,
and
perfect timing.
yeah, Mikal Bridges though. I was saying, I was going to ask you, Mark. What's a player that's because we have a scarce amount of roster spots. So if you're adding a
Hmm.
guy, it needs to be fit now. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely.
Like a Mikal
Absolutely.
Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can't continue to add pieces, let's say in this draft, that aren't going to get the playing time. I think
Yeah.
we're close enough to winning now where it needs to be based on fit only.
That was the actual issue that I think we were all discussing before the start of the season. The question of would Jalen, would RJ, would Julius all fit together? And like I think that anyone who watches enough basketball, that question of fit was the concern. And what we're starting to see now that we're almost 3/4 of the way through with the season is that there are some legitimate fit concerns. I don't think that for myself, I'll just speak for myself. I don't think it materialized the way that we thought it would. I thought that many of us would had questions about the Jalen Randle fit. We just all assumed, I assumed at least, that RJ would figure it out. And it seems as if
Mm.
actually what's happened is that Jalen and Julius have figured out the fit really quickly. And it's RJ who's seemingly becoming more and more the odd man out. So, yeah, that's really the word for like not just the rest of the season, but for the off season is what's the fit? Not the name, but the fit.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. And I think for RJ to reach his potential, in terms of needing the ball a lot, I like RJ to become that all-rounded player in terms of being able to distribute and score.
Hmm.
And, Jalen Brunson has lived up to the billing, but he's that guy now that's really that scorer for this team as well.
Yeah.
Some people have knocked it. Some people feel like Brunson needs to distribute more, get the ball moving. What are your thoughts on that? We know Randall's assisting has gone up this year. That's
Yeah.
been solid. But
I think that, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Do you feel like those three can coexist and be that big three to stay?
I'm having more and more questions about RJ. And it's not just from like the last 5 or 6 games. It was even prior to his having the laceration in his hand. Um, there again, like the thing I love about Brunson is his ability to be a thinking basketball player. Like, I think on the
Mm.
last broadcast they raised the point, like, he's not going to out quick you, he's not going to out muscle you, for most of the time. But what he does is that he's a thinking basketball player. Um, Julius is oftentimes just the epitome of brute force. But there's something about RJ though, where like it just seems as if he just develops tunnel vision. Like he has in mind already what he wants to do, and there isn't that ability necessarily to improv. So like I guess like the best play that epitomizes it was I believe it was the last game where or the game before the Atlanta game where OB was wide open under the basket, and RJ for some reason just didn't see it. And I'm not saying that
Mm.
it makes him a bad player, but it's just one of those things where why wasn't he able to see it? Was it that he was so zoned in on what he was doing in terms of operating against his man, but he couldn't have that additional vision to see an open player? And I think that kind of epitomizes some of the concern when you're talking about that person who would likely be the number three of a big three.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think a better catch and shoot guy would be
Yeah.
great. Um, Better defensively, but RJ can still become a better defender. Like I don't feel like what we've seen this year, as concerning as it is, I don't think RJ Barrett's going to be this kind of defender for the rest of his career. I think he obviously needs to do some extra work, drills. I think he needs
Hmm.
to shed a few pounds,
Yeah.
get that foot speed. All right, that second, I think the chat's always been saying, I think Dirty as well, the second year RJ Barrett defensively, that guy
Yeah.
putting up 15 points, 18 points. Um, Everyone keeps mentioning Barrett's a 20 per game scorer and all of that. I'm not really enamored with that so much. I'm more like, can he lock down and can he distribute? You know?
And can he self edit during the course of a game? Like there are games where if the three isn't falling, you know, shot number three, shot number four, do you have the ability to say, okay, it's not falling right now. Would I be better served to become a mid range RJ and make that like maybe that's what RJ really stands for is mid range J, hit like go in there and hit that mid range J so that maybe it does supercharge your offense for the second half of the game. Maybe it
Mm.
does change the defensive posture. So even if it doesn't benefit you, but as you're penetrating into the mid range, it opens up the floor for someone else because defenses are going to sag in towards you. And maybe you can kick it out towards an RJ. Maybe you can kick it out towards an IQ. But that's all about the ability to self edit and have the idea that I don't necessarily have to commit to the first option, the first thing that I think of. And it seems sometimes that's what happens with him.
Yeah. And in terms of RJ's fate, do you feel like a Quickly's emergence, Grimes being here, do you think that could influence the team's decision making on Barrett long term, Hart included? Do you feel like there's these guys emerging, and I'm gonna say it, they're better defenders. They're more
Yeah.
efficient scorers right now. Uh, I really feel like Emmanuel Quickly is that guy. That guy, he's not the same size, but if
Mhm.
you're trying to land that extra third star and you have Quickly's salary, you have to keep in mind you're gonna have to pay Grimes in 2 years. Like they really do need to make a decision on RJ, not like immediately, but with these other guys needing to get paid, I don't think you can pay all of them.
You can't. You can't. I mean, it's very rare for any team in basketball to do what, for example, Golden State is doing, where
Mm.
you keep your players and you're willing to hit not just the salary, like the tax threshold and like the penalty, but you're paying penalty upon penalty. It's very rare for teams to do that. Um, and I can't think. I mean, it's been a while since the Knicks have willingly said we're going to exceed the tax threshold and be penalized. for, like X number of players. Is RJ Barrett the kind of player where you're going to say, tax be damned, and we're going to go for it and we're going to pay every single player? I don't think that's realistic. And I think that's the part of it where we're now going to start having different kinds of conversations. The conversation we had a season ago or 2 seasons ago about what RJ could be, we had the luxury of time to imagine what he could be. Now the clock is ticking because of other people's contracts. And so we can't just look at RJ as a singular talent. We have to look at him in relationship to his cap hold and what it does to the salary cap and maneuverability in the future. And that's a hard reality for some of us to accept.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you hit. And I think ultimately what this team, what it looks like we're trending towards is ready to make that blockbuster deal in terms of a young piece that could satisfy a team. Like we really are positioned well, I think, to make that star trade if and when whoever it is, because you have a guy like quickly you could add in if you want to, let his salary go. You have a guy like RJ who, teams want draft picks, but they also want 1 or 2 solid young players.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think in the 25 milli is a solid number to take back if you are that team trying to hit the reset button. So yeah, it does look like if I put my crystal ball on that, like, maybe in not this summer, but maybe one more year, whoever becomes available, RJ or somebody else could be in that package.
Which is why, like, I love what you just said, which is why that deal, even though, like, if you look at it in the immediate, you have questions about it. But again, like, it is the kind of deal that, so long as RJ is doing relatively what he's doing now in the future, it maintains maneuverability. And I think that should be one of the ultimate goals for the organization, is that you want to have that level of maneuverability where you can move contracts if a person becomes available, and you have not only desirable contracts, but desirable pieces. Emmanuel, quickly, I've fallen in love with this game, but he's one of those players that's a desirable piece. And it's been a long time since, like, I remember like 4 years ago, when we were talking about Dame Lillard, one of the main points that NBA insiders would always say or ask is, well, what did the Knicks have to trade? More and more with the outbreak of the kind of flourishing that IQ has shown recently, you have a tradable asset in terms of him, a player that other teams want. And I think that it does take just a couple of games, a couple of weeks for RJ to become that. Again, please make sure you're listening to me carefully. Not that I want for him to be traded, but difficult decisions will need to be made relatively soon.
Yep, definitely. And man, it's great to have you back. Missed you.
I'm back, baby.
Definitely missed you.
Thank
The
you,
chat
my
missed
brother.
you as well. Hope everything's been well. And yeah, catch us
Thanks.
up on your thoughts on the Josh Hart thing, the Knicks' recent play, 6 games over.
Yeah.
What do you want to get out there?
I find it fascinating. I have so much. It's been such a long time. And thank you for everyone for being a certain CT. Thank you for always checking up on me. Life happens. So no, I didn't like banned from the show. But life does happen. So at any rate, I've been obviously keeping tabs of what's been happening in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It is amazing for the Knicks how they've, in the last 3 seasons, I believe, one trade each of the last season. And it's like, okay, this is the one thing we're going to work on. So it's quite fascinating. So that was the first thing that I observed. Second has been really Jalen Brunson has had an attitude on him in terms of, I think, feeling snubbed. Like he knows what he can be, and he already knows what he is. So to those who think that he shoots too much, guys, it's been a long time since I don't think we've had a point guard like this. The modern NBA, no, I'm going to say definitively, we've not had a modern NBA point guard on this roster.
No.
the modern NBA point guard isn't like, the Walt Clyde Frazier's back in the 70s. It's not the, Mark Jacksons of the 80s. It's not the Rod Stricklands where they're like pass first. No, they are scoring threats. And the idea is to be a constant scoring threat. That's what Jalen Brunson is. Is he a top five point guard? I would say no, but he is doing work. And I am excited to have that guy on the team. It adds a totally different dimension. Um, and I think the other thing too is I'm excited about what this season could lead to. Not a championship, obviously, but I'm excited to see how certain players are growing. So, I'm sure there are other things that I'm missing that I wanted to talk about once I got back. And Brooklyn, my gosh,
Yes. Don't worry, I'll throw
we
questions at you.
we called it. We called it. We called it during the offseason. We said this was going to happen, and it has.
Yep. We called it, man. It don't matter
Yeah.
about the talent. If you put the wrong personalities together, it's just not going to work. Um,
No.
they chose Brooklyn for all the wrong reasons. That's exactly why it blew
Absolutely.
up. They thought they could just,
Absolutely.
let's go to a place where there's less spotlight and ball out. The spotlight's going to follow them wherever they're at.
Hmm.
Um, and the Harden thing. I mean, they made so many mistakes along the way. Getting Ben Simmons in there now has proven to be god awful. That would have been
You know what
better to
this?
let Harden walk, I think.
Yeah. You know what this does too, CT. This actually, when people have time to really reflect on this in the years to come, this also adds to the legend of LeBron James because
Yes.
the idea of the super team and that it's easy. All you have to do is get inordinate amounts of talent and just put them together, just roll the basketball out on the floor, and they'll win a championship. I don't think people really understand. Some people don't understand how difficult it was for LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and particularly Chris Bosh to sacrifice and to understand one another and to have those difficult conversations, those really difficult conversations in terms of establishing roles. It is well apparent that that probably did not take place in Brooklyn. And the idea of these super teams, I hope they begin to diminish because you're not going to always have a LeBron James, a Dwayne Wade, and a Chris Bosh and be able to make it work. It doesn't necessarily work that way. I mean, if it didn't work out in Cleveland with Kyrie and Kevin Love and LeBron, stop thinking that this is just the quick way of winning a championship. It doesn't seem to be as simple as people seem to think it is.
Yeah, and obviously that toe may have got them,
Hmm.
Kevin Durant's toenail may have got
Yeah,
them closer, but that's the window. That's how fickle this NBA is now.
yeah.
The Celtics still may come up short. Philly,
Hmm.
the story
Hmm.
may be that MB never gets to the top of the mountain
Yeah,
with Philly. So it's tough. It's tough in this situation. But yeah, the Knicks, they're moving with pieces and doing things they haven't done in a decade.
yeah,
The Brunson thing, I mean, how much of a snub was that, EJ, to not get in? I mean, DeMar DeRozan, Drew
yeah,
Holiday
yeah, yeah.
getting in.
I think that's the point where it's I believe it's a snub. But at the same time, I think that there's an extent to which we have to have a level of accountability at the point in which the rosters were decided, or the players were decided, rather not the rosters, but the players were decided. There are certain games we should have won that would have made it a little bit more politically feasible to have two Knicks be all stars. So like if we won like a couple of those games, like just three more of those games, and the Knicks have, a +3 in terms of their record, it becomes easier for people to stomach in the NBA world, not just in the local New York market, or for us as Knicks fans. It becomes easier for people to stomach the idea of two Knicks making the roster. However, I do wholeheartedly believe that Jalen Brunson, particularly like because the NBA is really about stories. The story of leaving Luca's side and striking it out on your own and becoming really the leader of a team that was not necessarily clear what the direction was going to be for the Knicks this season, and clearly becoming the leader and doing as well as he done, you reward that. I'm sorry, you do reward that with an All-Star um, nomination. I'm sorry, like it just makes sense. So I'm frustrated, but I also understand why some people would argue he doesn't deserve it. But without a doubt, like he deserved to be an All-Star this season.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And we know Randle got in as a reserve, but
Mhm.
Randle in the 3-point contest now, hey, that's going to be fun to watch. Watch Randle jack them up. Um, and I saw Will's
How-
comment too. Shout out Will. He said he feels Randle's going to be part of Jericho Sims' dunk. It's going to be part of one dunk. He feels so that'd be cool.
that's going to be fascinating. It's really, what's funny about it's like this is like it's going to be a fascinating Knicks All-Star weekend because I for as much as Jericho has the hops, he has the bunnies. Um, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with it because, like Mark said, and we all know when we watch enough dunk contests, there is big man bias. So I'm eager to see what's going to happen with it. And
Ma-
but I'm just ready to have fun with this weekend.
Yeah, you know what's gonna be cool? Jericho comes out in a Superman outfit, and he takes over that mantle from Dwight, and he jumps over Julius Randle.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I think Tom Thibodeau has probably explicitly said there is no jumping over any Julius Randle. I believe that Tom Thibodeau would probably sacrifice himself before allowing Julius to take part in any stunt or shenanigans during the dunk contest. Um, so I think we may have lost CT for a second. There he goes.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's going to be a fun weekend. This might be the most fun Knicks All Star weekend since that. I think what season was that? 2013, the Steve Novak and James Flight
Oh,
White All Star weekend.
yep.
That to me was like the most fun of the recent All Star weekends because of the Knicks' presence in multiple All Star festivities.
Yeah, and in terms of the season as well, like we're in the best position I think since that season 2012 2013 10
Hmm.
we're in the best position at All-Star break in terms of the standings in a decade. So I mean, there's not been a lot to compare that to live up to, but
Yeah.
um, Randall is the two-time All-Star now and has made improvements. Give him credit for that.
Yeah.
What I've seen with Randall, I've seen more engaged defensively. We're seeing
Hmm.
those hustle plays. Did you catch that Atlanta game where Atlanta were making that run and Julius pulled in like three key offensive rebounds to rally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I think part of the thing we talked about earlier this at the very beginning of the season. There are certain elements, even as Knicks content creators, there are certain aspects of the game that we can suspect, but they'll manifest themselves if we are correct. And I think part of what a number of us were starting to suspect by the end of last season is Julius's demeanor was likely due to something that we didn't know. It wasn't a physical thing, as Mark said before. But what we're seeing is that there is this importance in terms of like physical health and mental health in professional sports. And so because it seems as if Julius is locked in mentally, it's allowed him to have this renaissance, this rebirth for this season. And I do think, in part, not in totality, but in part, Jalen Brunson clearly being a vocal and demonstrative leader might have alleviated some of the pressure off of Julius. And we don't know unless he eventually says it, or unless he realizes it and crystallizes it and then articulates it, how that in fact has benefited his game.
Yeah, exactly, right. Uh, in terms of playing off Brunson, like
Hmm.
those two guys, yeah, they take turns and stuff, but it's been better than what I had hoped. Those two
Absolutely.
playing off of each other, and yeah,
Absolutely.
Brunson's just that smart point guard that we've been needing.
Hmm.
He can get a bucket on anyone. I've just been in admiration of Jalen Brunson's bag of tricks.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
Dallas. I think Mark Cuban and Dallas, in and I spoke to Dirk Nowitzki, as everybody knows. But I feel
Mhm.
like Dallas is looking at this situation like, man, if we had that with Luca, like,
I'll ask you a question, CT. Is Dallas? I'm really putting you on the spot. Is
oh,
Dallas better with Kyrie, Luca? Sorry, dude. Or
oh,
Luca, Jalen? And feel free in the chat. Gonna put you on the spot.
well, long term, it's a no-brainer. Better with Jalen long term because, I know I'm trying to evade the question as well, but I think Kyrie. I think I said when you were just on the break, I said Kyrie is
Mhm.
a rental.
Yeah.
Only because Kyrie, the talent that but they both need the ball. They're both isolation.
Hmm.
Jalen Brunson can play off, I think, off of Luca better than Kyrie because as crazy as this may sound, as good as Luca is, when the game's on the line, I would want the ball in Kyrie's hands. And then you got a situation where you're having Luca play off the ball that he's not used to.
Yeah.
Um, whereas it was clear that Luca had the ball, and then Brunson was okay playing off of Luca. Um, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that like one of the things, like when I'm doing research and when I'm listening around and checking out like the NBA circles, the NBA, much like other professional sports leagues, it's a brotherhood, and for the most part, you know, players will not critique other players. But I do feel, and we saw this with James Harden, there's an extent to which I think some players, if you were to ask them and you say, I would never ever disclose what you told me, I think there are some players who are starting to have trust issues with Kyrie. Like this idea of, okay, I'll know you have a more talent than Jalen, but can I trust you to be there the entirety of this journey? Can I trust you to be there the
Mm.
rest of the season? Can I trust you to really be there mentally the entirety of where we're going or where we're trying to go? And so I think we would want to say that the answer is Kyrie, but at this point, this is now what, team number 4? How many all-time players, are 4 teams in? There are very few that we can count. Like even LeBron, you know, when we have the LeBron Jordan debate, like part of what makes it complicated is that he's been on 3 teams. But do we really trust Kyrie to really fully commit to Dallas? And does that show up in your play? So I'd
Yep.
probably go Luca, and Jalen.
But yeah, I agree. But having said that, I think Dallas it wasn't necessarily not the right move. I think like
Yeah.
Toronto when they traded their favorite son DeMar for Kawhi, everyone was like, "What are you doing? Kawhi's going to skip to LA." But it got them
Hmm.
a chip. It,
Yeah.
one of the greatest moment in their franchise. That never would have happened if they didn't
Hmm.
take that gamble. So some players are worth the gamble. I get Kyrie, Luca. You could create some damage in the playoffs with those guys, but and given they struck out on Brunson, and given maybe Luca was getting more disgruntled, maybe maybe they absolutely needed to pull that trigger for Kyrie. But let's see. I think he's going to go to the Lakers. I
Yeah.
think yeah, it's. Could you imagine being out west and trying to, I know the East is tough, but imagine trying to go up against the Suns, the Nuggets, Memphis. I mean, the pathway to the second and third round is crazy enough, let
Yeah.
alone
Yeah.
making it to the finals. You, you
Well, I'll throw this in. I was saying this before. The KD trade had to happen because, like we said at the start of the season, that inability for there to be a Donovan Mitchell trade for a while, that inability for KD to get his trade demand request realized, it kind of held up the NBA and those rosters very early on. And I think the flurry of trades that we saw towards the trade deadline was a way for teams to really like complete the rosters that they initially wanted to have by the start of the season. So I'm saying all this to say that this is now really the East. This is now really the Western Conference. And we're
Mm.
going to see some real dogfights in the playoffs. And so I really do think that business will be picking up for everyone in terms of these series, because what Phoenix is today versus what it was 2 weeks ago, night and day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And with the Knicks' offense and the defense with Mitch out, has that surprised you the way the Knicks going through this tough schedule? When remember we got back down to like 2 games over 500, looked
Hmm.
like we were going to hit a little tailspin. Mitch
Hmm.
was out. It looked ugly. I think 2 games after Mitch went down, everyone was clamoring for Serge Ibaka. And
Yeah.
could we
Yeah.
get Dwight Howard from Taiwan? And here we are now. Mitch about to come back,
Yeah.
chilling at All-Star break. 6 games over now with Mitch out, ready to come back.
Yeah. We talked about this as well. Like, the we can't underestimate the importance of time together, like that growth and that can just happen at a certain point. And we've actually seen this from the Knicks before, where they'll hit. I think like actually two of the last three seasons where like all hope seems lost, and then there's some sort of stretch towards the end of the season where all of a sudden like they seem to click. And it's because sometimes it takes a long time for people to begin to adjust to roles. I think the other thing that we can't dismiss is this season we've had some key players miss significant time. So this is Mitch's turn missing significant time. RJ missed some time, and these are people who were supposed to contribute major minutes. And so I do think that we can't discount that. And I do think though Thibodeau will have his hands full trying to maintain what seems like an upward trajectory while also trying to reintegrate Mitchell Robinson. So I am excited to see what happens. While at the same time, Hartenstein seems to have a renewed energy, a renewed, I don't want to say focus, but he seems recharged in a way where there might be more clarity in his role. So, how do you reintegrate Mitchell Robinson without disrupting what now seems to be clicking for Isaiah and Hartenstein?
Yeah, think about the rebounding too, with Josh Hart, the way Mitch
Hmm.
rebounds, and the way
Quick.
Randle's rebounding now. I mean,
Yeah.
there won't be a spare rebound to go around, I don't think.
Yeah.
Uh, and shout out to Hartenstein and Sims, like you said. Yeah, Hartenstein, it does seem like something clicked, like
Yeah.
his Achilles got better or something.
Hmm. And that's going to be important. Like, I mean, um, and this is why we were saying before, and like I do remember like one of the last times I was on, we started talking about like how when you have to think about the team as it's currently constituted, but decisions that are going to happen in the offseason, not just this offseason 2023, but also the offseason 2024. What starts to get complicated is you start to think to yourself like, oh, you can't have all of these players. You're going to have to start folding contracts together and making deals and combining, two players into one player, because not every player is going to be getting minutes. I mean, who would have thought at the start of the season that Derrick Rose would have last played in Chicago and gotten like 3 minutes of playing time? Like it's just crazy, But this roster is one of those ones where like not everyone's going to get minutes.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah,
I was going
yeah,
to
I
say,
couldn't hear you.
EJ, yeah, I was going to say, speaking of a guy who's going to get minutes, Josh Hart, do you see a
Yeah.
world where he's going to take Grimes' starting spot, or do you think it just doesn't matter because
Ooh.
Hart's going to finish games out?
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think that the concept of who starts the games, it doesn't matter as much as it may have once. Um, much as it used to be the conversation piece. Like, I mean, look at how look at IQ's role. A couple of weeks ago we were talking like it just seemed to appear that IQ was closing out games, and for many of us, we didn't even realize it until we are like, wait, when's the last time we've seen RJ in the game? The shift in terms of RJ's minutes, spending more time with the second unit. Um, I think the notion of like starting is not as important as is not as important as closing the game or like matchups. I kind of like keeping Josh Hart where he is right now because we also have to remember that he's doing this against mainly other teams' second units. So if he's providing that energy so that we don't have those lulls and we can like have different waves of attacks, I'd want to continue that. I would want to preserve that as well. So let him do what he's doing, let him cook. And if we need to make an adjustment because it presents itself because of an injury, that's when we should talk about it. But for now, let it be what it is.
Yeah, talk about great fit with Brunson, with chemistry, well, with Thibs now. And of course, Cam Reddish is now gone, getting great opportunity with Portland, which is
Yeah.
good. That's where he needs to be. A team that he can play more. That worked out, yeah, for both sides. It really did.
Yeah.
And a Hart taking that number 3, EJ, just that John Starks is one of my favorite Knicks of all
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and plays like him. It can do it all.
Yeah. I saw like as like in Nick's Twitter sphere, as soon as Cam had his first game post trade, there was the litany of like overreactions, immediate reactions, snap reactions of fire Tibbs,
Mhm.
fire Tibbs, fire Tibbs. Guys, like we can't ever. There are certain things that we can't understand about the game, like Cam Reddish's role on a Knicks roster versus Cam Reddish's role on a Portland roster. Um, you know, we don't know there might have been a conversation that was had. There might have been other circumstances that led to Cam not necessarily fitting in quite the way that his talent might have suggested, but it might have been other things that didn't quite fit. We don't know if it was attitude. We don't know if it was like, effort and practice. We don't know what it was. Although like the thing that we all see, the thing that's always front facing with us is what's happening in terms of the games. Like what are the stat lines? But I wish him well. Like I hope he succeeds. I will never treat Cam Reddish the way that I see Kristaps Porzingis. But you know, um, there are scenarios where two teams can both win a trade.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, definitely. And in terms of like, yeah, this season, I feel like fifth seed is definite possibility. The Heat have
Hmm.
regressed, and we're looking like that matchup with Cleveland could be a favorable matchup for the New York Knicks. They waived Kevin Love. The Knicks actually have 2
Yeah,
roster spots still,
yeah.
and we did hear a report from Mike Scotto today that the Knicks are interested or looking into maybe giving one spot to Daquan Jeffries.
Hmm.
That wasn't surprising to me because I don't think they want to add 2 bigger names. I think they just want to keep the locker room maybe as it is and keep one roster
Yeah,
spot available closer to the playoffs and maybe give an opportunity to a younger guy.
which makes sense. I mean, I think I really feel in this moment, and I could be wrong, like there's a better line of communication that seems to be pervading the organization. Um, Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't moments where it seems like we're going to ask the question, like, what the heck is the organization doing? But being patient enough to not sign the biggest name on the market and understanding what the team is and is current as is currently constituted, as is currently constructed, that's a sign of like some sort of organizational discipline. Um, Likewise, like I'd like the idea of okay, we don't need to have every single roster spot filled, and also, you know, if there's a chance to sign a younger player that's part of our system, do that. but at the same time, like, let the season be what the season needs to be, and avoid, like, avoid the appetite or the urge to sign a name for a name. By the way,
Yeah.
really quickly, we have to give ourselves props. I'm always willing to, like, critique myself and say, like, I was wrong about this, I was wrong about this. But we have to give ourselves props because there are certain teams at the beginning of the season. I just want to shout Knicks buzz about this, that we said they were going to struggle this season. They weren't going to be what other people were calling them to be. And some of those teams include Chicago. We both said, I don't see it. We both said the Heat. I don't see it. Guys, what the heck? And this is like a really important one. Atlanta. For as much as everyone was like, not everyone, for as much as a certain portion of Knicks fandom was really like mad, apoplectic about DeJounte Murray. What? What's Atlanta? What, like, I mean, so I think this is why, this is a wise philosopher who says that every season, you know, has a mind of its own.
Yep.
It does.
Exactly. Yeah. People thinking they're paper champs. Like,
Yeah.
remember Ja Morant wasn't long ago when he said, "I'm good out west."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, you don't know what's
Okay.
going
All
to
right.
happen, man. The trade deadline didn't even hit. It was like, did you know KD might go out west? Like,
Yeah.
but
He was definitely off target with that one.
yeah, and you got to play the games first. That's why I
Yeah.
always say at the start of the season why I said what I said. Um, I looked at the Heat. I'm like, man, a lot of mileage on Butler. Kyle Lowry is very old. He's regressed. Um, and yeah, Jalen Brunson, I think was extremely underrated. He was hidden
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
Luka. He,
Yeah.
in my eyes, in the playoffs last year, he was clearly the guy that was ready to take a big leap on a team with bigger usage. You don't
Yeah.
put up 40 points in a playoff battle without that kind of talent.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that's the piece, like, in terms of when we're trying to prognosticate, when we're trying to predict, all of us are guessing to a certain extent with regards to, like, what we think records are going to be. But there are certain trends that kind of make sense in the league, like in terms of, like, Miami and its championship window. Like, it was kind of clear that they were hitting walls. And, the other part of it too is maneuverability. Like, there are certain teams that once you kind of commit to the idea, all right, this is my championship window and we're going to make moves to maximize that championship window, you kind of you kind of eliminate the ability to have maneuvers that you can make to improve upon that team. There's a certain point that's all you can do to add to it. That's all you can do to make that team better. Miami hit that particular point. And Chicago, we saw what injuries can do. And that's the other thing that we all, like, come into, with just assuming that every player is going to be healthy. Chicago and the injuries, but that Atlanta squad, like, that seems to be the epitome of, like, the talent not meeting expectation, and that also can
yeah,
happen. So we can't just make predictions off of what we perceive the talent to be, because sometimes the
yeah,
talent doesn't overcome the other shortcomings.
yeah, exactly. And I want to ask you a question in the chat too. Put your name
Mm.
out there. Who's that guy that's
Ooh,
realistic, that's gonna fit with this team and take this team to that next level? Is it
wow,
EJ, chat? Is it an OG? Is it Levine? Is it Cat? Is it Embiid? Uh,
wow,
SGA. I don't really. Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think
we
so.
could throw him in there. I don't know if he's gettable, but it's going to take a lot of picks. Like who's your guy, EJ? Like if
Yeah,
Brunson and Randle long term, like who are they? Jalen Brown's a good name.
yeah, that's a really dirty answer. Thank you for bailing a brother out. I mean, because I think at this point, like, the one thing that we kind of have to, like, just explicitly marry together is that if it's going to be Julius and Jalen Brunson, it has to be someone in terms of fit. like the fit portion of it has to now really be like front and center. It just can't be someone's. It just can't be a name. It has to be a name that fits. Um, so in a perfect world, Bill, I wish it were Brandon Ingram. Like that would be in my perfect world if that were
Fat.
possible. I don't think it's likely that it'll be Brandon Ingram, but I think it's like a Brandon Ingram like
Yep.
player. So like to those who are not fans of Zach LaVine, I get it. Um, I totally get it. I'm with you. I wouldn't like. I'd be concerned if it were Zach LaVine. If it were Zach LaVine, I'd feel like that would be a move to make a move to satisfy like the adrenaline that fans feel when a move is made. I don't necessarily think that'd be the best move, but I don't know who it is, but like if it could be a Brandon Ingram type player, that'd be great.
Yeah, like Bill said, I love Ingram, and you said I struggle to see a world where he'll become available, given where Pelicans are at in terms of
Yeah.
their future, their bright future. But yeah, you never know. The bright lights come calling, and teams are going to want that market now. Remember, we always say you build New York Knicks up, and people
Yeah.
will eventually want to come because if it's attractive on the court and it's attractive in the city, like I think Lamelo Ball. Not that he's a guy that's top of my list. Not that that's the case, but he's that
Mhm.
name where he could realistically be gettable. Will says I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say it's the growth of our own guys, your RJs, your Grimes, and your Quicklies.
Mm.
I only want to pay dogs.
Yeah, I mean, Will, and I love how you contribute to the show. I think one of the major concerns, and we're seeing that on several teams, the that dog, that mentality is so critical. Like, I'm not trying to dump on, Brooklyn. I have some people in my life who I love are Brooklyn fans. I do make fun of them every now and again, but then they can always tell me when's the last time you've seen a Knicks championship. I've never seen a Knicks championship in my life, but I really don't think that every player you shouldn't chase after every player. And I think that one of the more fortunate things that happened to us is that we didn't win the KD and Kyrie sweepstakes, because it would have set this team back conceivably. It would have set this team back decades or a decade. Um, so when it comes to talent acquisition, it's about fit, not just player fit in terms of how well they shoot, how well they rebound, how well they defend, but it's also what kind of person is that person in the locker room? Are they a leader? Are they an encourager? Are they the kind of person who's going to pick up their teammate when the teammate is down? Are they that kind of person who, young players can look up at them and say, like, listen, I'll sacrifice. Guys, you understand how cool it is that Deuce McBride is willing to sacrifice minutes to Josh Hart? That speaks so much. That speaks volumes. Where Q dot is like, I'm good. Like that says a lot. That says so much. And like those are the kind of players beyond name recognition that's what I want for the next big signing or trade to be.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're trying to go for that chip, you do need to be kind of top heavy too. You do need
Mhm.
you can supplement the role players later, but you got to get that big three, that big two first.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely missing that playmaking wing. Obviously, yeah, I like Will's comment about Grimes' growth, RJ's growth, and that. The good thing is with Brunson and Randle's timeline, they're not even yet in their prime, so
Yeah.
we got like 5 solid years to try to figure it out if those are the other two guys. Um, but drafting is key. Let's not continue to underestimate drafting.
Yeah.
Stars are found in that teens range still. That's still a possibility. This draft's loaded. Walt Perrin's doing scouting overseas, everywhere. Um, but I do feel like they're going to trade all these picks for somebody. It's
Yeah, they have to.
it's yeah, it's a situation where maybe it is an OG, Mikal Bridges. Maybe they feel like fit is just all we need. Um, and let's not underestimate Mitchell Robinson, his impact coming back. I think
Yeah, yeah,
imagine this team
yeah.
buckling down, grittiness defensively in a playoff battle with heart, with the Garden going insane, with Brunson now. Uh, let's rewind and replay that Atlanta series 2 years ago, but with
Oh,
Mitch
absolutely.
healthy and Brunson.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what's exciting is, um, like this is. Oh my gosh, I've been talking so much about them. In a weird way, to some extent, obviously, like there are differences with regards to the coach, but this is kind of where Brooklyn was trending prior to that offseason where they signed KD and Kyrie. Maybe not even the offseason, maybe the year before, where you're starting to see names emerge, like like that Spencer Dinwiddie, and now all of a sudden people are like, "Who is Spencer Dinwiddie?" And like the Karis LeVert, like maybe you're starting to you're in that early um, blossoming of players who we saw with Brooklyn, and maybe you're seeing like rebirths in certain players, like a Julius Randle, where there were questions about what is Julius Randle in his first stop in LA, and then in terms of New Orleans, and that's enticing in terms of what that can be. But the next move will require a lot of foresight with regards to fit, um, because the wrong trade can definitely upset the development of so many other players and like the resurgences of other players. So it has to be fit first, fit first, fit first.
Yep, you said it. Speaking of fit, Obi, it's tough. I love the way he's shooting recently.
Yeah.
Obi's really splashing that three ball, EJ. I feel like we just never gonna see that sliding doors moment. But Obi is a starting caliber player in my opinion, talent. It, it's amazing we haven't yet seen him play like 30 minutes a night for like 20 games in a row, and
Yeah.
and what that may have looked like.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that, um, like I said earlier, I think it's just the confluence of all of the wrong variables at the same time. It's like Coach Thibodeau, if Coach Thibodeau had a 10-man rotation, or here's the other part that I forgot to mention. If Coach Thibodeau didn't believe in playing his starters 30, 32, 33, 34 minutes, um, that's an extra, like, 4 or 5 minutes where Obi's on the court. Obi seems to have this personality where like if you ever like watch him during the game, like you could just feel like he's constantly looking at the bench, like just saying, when am I going to get pulled? What do I have to do to not get pulled? The fact that Julius doesn't take games off, that's huge because that affects Obi's numbers. That affects Obi's minutes. Like the New York Knicks are one of the few teams that doesn't do load management, as Mark Berman said. But that then has an
Yeah.
impact on its younger players and their ability to demonstrate in prime time what they are or what they could be.
Yeah, Mark did clarify with the Obi situation that Tom loves the fact that he can shoot the three, but he just still doesn't have that
Mhm.
confidence in his defensive IQ, his defensive ability to play him more minutes. And I feel like that's where it starts and ends with Obi's New York Knicks career. It's just Tom Thibodeau. Had we had a guy like
Mm.
a guy who's willing to play more experimental lineups and things, yes, Obi's never going to be that probably above average, amazing defender, but with another coach, he could certainly live with him making a few blunders, a few errors, and
Yeah.
play 30 something minutes. But I just think, yeah, it's Tom Thibodeau. That's ultimately, he's just not a Tibbs guy. The same way Josh Hart is a Tibbs guy, Obi's never ever going to be a Tibbs guy.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like I think sometimes that, um, in my day in my profession that sometimes we don't understand. Um, there are also generational things that take place in sports that sometimes we don't understand, or that we don't appreciate or remind ourselves of when we're having conversations. Obi's what, 22, 23 at this point? Um, and I could
He's
do the quick
24
search.
now. He's 24 going
24.
25.
Um, the Not every player does well in today's NBA with handling handling the scrutiny of messing up, the scrutiny of missing a play or missing a coverage or missing a defensive assignment. And Coach Thibodeau, for like his strengths, sometimes like if he has a player that it's clear that he's not necessarily his number one person, he kind of makes it clear, like, he'll be demonstrative, he'll be quick to pull someone. Whereas, like, with a Julius, like, Julius has a very long leash. Jalen obviously has the same leash. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve it because clearly, um, Jalen, for example, backs it up almost every night. Julius has definitely had an amazing season. However, it can get into the psyche of some players. Like, you're not going to play the fullest version of yourself because you're afraid if I mess up, I'm going to hear it, and I'm already in my own head about my performance. I'm already in my own head questioning what kind of player am I going to be. Um, like we kind of saw that with Kevin Knox to a certain extent. Like Kevin Knox is one of those players where he kind of had a similar. I'm going to check the bench because I know I'm probably going to be pulled at some point, and I don't want to do anything that's going to make the coach mad at me and reduce my playing time. So, you know, it's just one of those weird things about like young players in the league and like trying to find their niche and trying to find their place. And how do you coach up a player so that they have the confidence to be fully assertive and when they have their run, but at the same time, you know, you do have time for vets, you do have minutes for vets as well.
Yeah, there'll be like teams that'll call the Knicks for Obi, no doubt. I think Detroit
Mm.
would be a great fit. They traded Sadiq Bey, which we
Yeah,
expected to happen, but I think that were the team would have been talking to the Knicks. I think Indiana will revisit that. Maybe
yeah,
Toronto. I think Toronto would be a nice fit for Obi as well, running up and down. Maybe it becomes a bigger deal with RJ and Obi, and we can get yeah, OG back and someone else. They might even trade Pascal. I think no
Pascal
one knows
Siakam,
what
yeah,
Toronto's going to do. Yeah, and I think Chicago is definitely going to blow things up, whether we're
they have
really
to.
keen on Levine or not. Chicago not making any moves, Toronto not making any moves. That tells me that the summer is when they're trying to do things.
Yeah, it's I'm just looking at Chicago's roster right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've really, I mean, they have to because at some point, like, you come to the realization, what is this team? I'm assuming that they definitely had clear aspirations of have a much better season and hasn't materialized, and they do have tradable commodities, and I don't imagine them being in a much better position with they maintain status quo. So yeah, at this point, I would expect that they'd be heavy sellers and retooling heavy this upcoming off season.
Yeah, and the draft's gonna be crazy too. We'll do some content, EJ,
Oh
coming
yeah,
up soon.
oh yeah,
Yeah, look forward to it, man. It's been great, great show. Great to catch up with
definitely.
you. And this season heads full throttle into the playoffs now. I think yeah, play in would be a failure at this stage. Then it's all things are set up for the Knicks to make
Yeah,
sixth or fifth.
yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see the end of this season, and hopefully, and you know what, like, again, shout out to the Garden the last few games,
Mm.
because I had called out like some of the games where it seemed as if people were more like they were busier, like I'm just gonna text my friend, even though I paid like thousands of dollars to be at a game. But the Garden recently has really, really been boisterous. You can actually hear it. There were a few games like a month or two ago where it seemed so quiet in the lower bowl. You could actually hear Tom Thibodeau yelling from it, like on TV. Like you can hear him yelling, Julius. Like you can actually hear him yelling out plays and stuff. And like that's a problem. But more recently, you could hear that energy, you can feel that energy, and it's been conveying on the television screen. And I wanted to just shout them out. So before we go, I wanted to make sure that I kind of checked off everything that I had not said in like the last month or so.
Yeah, no, definitely there'll be plenty of opportunities coming through as well. Yeah, I love the
Yeah,
heart
definitely.
pickup. Like Dirty said, sometimes you need a
Yeah,
little shake up. I said in the
yeah,
other show, there's a healthy shake up and then there's not so healthy. The Josh Hart shake up was all the way healthy because he got the respect of Deuce and Grimes automatically. You can't
yeah,
you can't be mad that he's stealing minutes if you're like he brings everything you're bringing and experience as well and
yeah,
and better rebounding and he's shooting 50% from the field when he
yeah,
came as a New York Knick and he's shooting even better than that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Dancer,
that's just
shout out for that one because, yeah, I like if you think about like certain players, they just they weren't stars, but they always seem to
mm,
bring the energy out of the MSG crowd. So like Steve Novak, I loved Steve Novak. Like just
yeah.
just the like and or if you think about J.R. Smith's ability, as much as he drove us crazy at times, he was that one of those players who just seemed to bring energy, and that energy then translated to the audience, to the crowd at MSG, and it fed right back. Kenyon Martin when he was healthy for that short little run. So yeah, maybe that was one of the missing ingredients for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to the chat, been amazing all night long. The best fan base in the streets, the best chat in the biz. Salute, Bill. It's been great to
Thank
have
you,
you
Bill.
on tonight. All the regulars, Nick Streets, certainly assemble tonight. And as we have a, All-Star break to look forward to, 4 New York Knicks participants in this All-Star weekend. Um, we look to better days, for championship aspirations. Let's hope we're getting closer to that. Always great conversation with the chat and you, EJ. And yeah, be well, my friend. Let's get it on the
You
next
too, buddy.
one. Yep. Enjoy your weekend. Berman come through. Shout out to him. And salute to Replay Gang. Continue the chat in the comment section. Like, subscribe. Plenty of draft content coming up. Some guests coming up next week as well. We got like 8-day break with no Knicks games. What are we gonna do? Let's
We
go.
got a lot to cover, man. We got a lot to cover.
Yep. As Josh Hart continues his hot start. Jalen Brunson got that chip on his shoulder. I feel like he's play gone to another level since missing out.
Definitely.
And yeah, Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride growing as players quickly. And Mitchell Robinson, does he get back in the first game back? Let's see. Does Jericho Sims lose out minutes? Hartenstein, I think, is going to be in the thick of the rotation. Many blessings. Salute to everyone. The streets are buzzing. Salute.